Nobody wanted Riyad Mahrez. Not the big academies in France, not the scouts who were supposed to spot talent, and not even the fans of the Algerian national team when he first got called up. They all said the same thing. He's too skinny, too weak, he'll never survive in modern football. Growing up in the Paris suburbs, Mahrez didn't look like a star. He didn't have the build of a Cristiano Ronaldo or the pace of a Kylian Mbappe. To most people, he looked like a kid who'd get bullied off the ball in seconds. Coaches laughed, scouts walked away, and opportunities closed before they even began. When Algeria announced his name for the national squad, the reaction was brutal. Fans actually protested. They said, "How can this unknown French reserve player wear the green shirt?" To them, it felt like an insult. And in a way, Mahrez wasn't even shocked. All his life, people told him the same story: you're not good enough. But here's the thing. What those people didn't know was that Mahrez carried something inside him, something that came from tragedy, and it was about to change everything. For most of his teenage years, Mahrez didn't take football seriously. He loved the game, sure, but not enough to sacrifice everything for it. He was the kind of player who showed up, dribbled past a few friends, and then went home to relax. There was no burning ambition, no obsession. And then in 2006, everything shattered. Mahrez was just 16 when his father, Ahmed, suddenly passed away. The man who had been his biggest supporter, the one who believed in him when no one else did, was gone in an instant. For Riyad, it was a devastating blow. But instead of breaking him, it lit something inside. He later admitted, "When my father died, football became serious. I had to make it. I had to do it for him." From that moment, Mahrez transformed. He wasn't just playing for himself anymore, he was playing with a promise. Every training session, every sprint, every tackle, he carried his father's memory with him. And that fire, that determination would be the only thing keeping him alive through the endless rejections that were waiting ahead. Because while Mahrez was finally ready to give everything, the football world still wasn't ready to give him a chance. Even with his new determination, Mahrez still had to face a brutal reality. Talent isn't always enough. He started going to trials, hoping some club would take a chance. But rejection followed him everywhere. In France, coaches dismissed him instantly. Too skinny, too fragile, not built for the professional game. One rejection hit so hard that Mahrez actually cried on the way home. It wasn't just disappointment. It felt like the game itself was shutting the door in his face. Desperate, he even tried his luck in Scotland. Cold weather, unfamiliar surroundings, and a football culture that valued strength over flair. It was a disaster. Mahrez hated every second of it. After one trial, he admitted he almost wanted to give up the dream completely. But fate has a strange way of working. When everyone else had said no, one tiny club finally opened the door. Comper, a 4th division team in France, decided to give him a chance. They didn't see a weak, fragile kid. They saw a player with vision, with magic in his left foot, and with something you couldn't teach: creativity. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't a big break, but it was enough. And from there, a chain of events would begin that would take Mahrez all the way to the biggest stage in football. Because while Comper gave him his first shot, someone else was about to discover him. And this man had an eye for legends. Sometimes, a career changes not because of hard work or luck, but because the right person is watching at the right time. For Mahrez, that person was Steve Walsh. Walsh was no ordinary scout. He was a talent magnet. The man who found Jamie Vardy in non-league football, who discovered N'Golo Kante running endlessly in League Two. He had an eye for players everyone else ignored. And in 2014, while scouting another footballer in the French second division, Walsh's attention was caught by a wiry left-footed winger. That winger was Riyad Mahrez. At first glance, even Walsh thought, too skinny for English football. But then Mahrez touched the ball, and everything changed. The way he glided past defenders, the vision in his passing, the confidence in his dribbling, it was pure flair, something England didn't usually produce. Walsh was hooked. He went back to Leicester and said, "We have to sign this guy." Everyone thought he was crazy. A £400,000 transfer from a second division French team? It sounded like a waste of money. But Walsh insisted. He knew Mahrez had the spark. And against all odds, Leicester City signed him. At the time, Mahrez himself didn't even know who Leicester were. He thought they were a rugby team. But that transfer, that tiny gamble, would lead him to one of the most impossible football miracles of all time. Because Leicester weren't just signing a player, they were signing the man who would soon light up the entire Premier League. When Mahrez first arrived at Leicester, nobody expected anything. He was supposed to be just another cheap signing, a squad player, maybe a backup for the real stars. In fact, he was so unknown that fans barely reacted when he walked onto the pitch. But slowly, things started to change. His dribbling hypnotized defenders, his left foot bent shots into the corners, and his vision created goals from nowhere. By the 2015-16 season, Mahrez wasn't just a good player, he was unstoppable. That year, Leicester City did the impossible. A club that had been fighting relegation, a team written off by every pundit, rose to the very top of the Premier League. It was supposed to be a league for billion-pound clubs, Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal. But instead, it was Leicester, led by an Algerian kid nobody wanted, who shocked the entire world. Mahrez scored 17 goals, delivered 11 assists, and left defenders spinning in circles. He was crowned PFA Player of the Year, the first African ever to win the award. A man once rejected for being too skinny was now the King of England. The fairy tale was complete, but for Mahrez, this was only the beginning. Because while he had conquered England, a new stage was waiting for him. A stage where he would fight not just for club glory, but for the pride of an entire nation. For years, Mahrez was criticized by Algerian fans. They saw him as too French, too soft, a player who would never bleed for the shirt. But by 2019, he had the chance to silence every doubt. That summer, the Africa Cup of Nations was held in Egypt, and Algeria carried the weight of a nation desperate for glory. The pressure was suffocating. Millions of fans back home expected nothing less than victory. And at the heart of it all stood Riyad Mahrez. Game after game, he rose to the occasion. The moment that defined him came in the semifinal against Nigeria. The score was tied. 90 minutes had passed. Then, in stoppage time, Algeria won a free kick. Mahrez stepped up. The stadium went silent. The tension was unbearable. And then, bang! His left foot curled the ball into the top corner, the net shook, and the commentator screamed, "Riyad Mahrez!" Algeria were through to the final. Days later, they lifted the trophy. Mahrez wasn't just a Premier League champion anymore. He was a national hero. The boy nobody wanted had become the pride of an entire country. But if people thought that was his peak, they were wrong, because the next chapter of his career would take him to the global stage, where after conquering England and Africa, Mahrez was ready for the next step. In 2018, Pep Guardiola and Manchester City came calling. The fee? Over £60 million, a record for the club at the time. For a boy once rejected as too skinny, the number was staggering. But this wasn't just about money. It was about proving he belonged at the very top of football. At City, Mahrez had to fight harder than ever. Guardiola's system was ruthless. One mistake and you were on the bench. Surrounded by world-class stars, many doubted if Mahrez could survive. But season after season, he adapted, sharpened his game, and became one of Pep's most reliable weapons. The defining moment came in the 2020-21 Champions League semifinal against PSG. The world expected Neymar and Mbappe to dominate. Instead, Mahrez stole the spotlight. He scored 3 goals across 2 legs, tearing apart the French champions and dragging City to their first-ever Champions League final. Even though City fell short that year, Mahrez's legacy was sealed. He had proven that flair, skill, and vision could thrive even at the most demanding club in the world. And when City finally lifted the Champions League trophy in 2023, Mahrez stood there as a European champion, a journey that had started on the dusty streets of Sarcelles. But while trophies defined his career, from a skinny kid nobody wanted to a Premier League champion, an African hero, and a European winner, Riyad Mahrez's story is the definition of resilience. He didn't just break into football, he rewrote the rules of what it means to succeed. He showed that you don't need the body of a machine or the backing of a superstar academy. What you need is vision, belief, and the courage to keep going when the world says you can't. For Leicester fans, he'll forever be the magician who delivered the greatest underdog story in football history. For Algeria, he's the captain who brought home the AFCON trophy with ice in his veins. For Manchester City, he became the player who could turn a Champions League semi-final on its head with a single strike. And even now, as his career enters its final chapters in Saudi Arabia, Mahrez's legacy is untouchable. He's not just a footballer, he's proof that sometimes destiny favors those who refuse to give up. So what comes next? Maybe more trophies, maybe new challenges. But one thing is certain, when people talk about the most unthinkable football stories of all time, the name Riyad Mahrez will always be there.